Joey gets a rusty key to what exactly? A box of old costume jewelry? Or maybe her secret stash of hard candies? My sister Ashley laughed, tossing her hair back. Her husband chuckled beside her, already mentally spending the millions she had just inherited. Across the table, my brother Marcus didn't even look up from his phone. He was probably already browsing listings for luxury penthouses. We were sitting in the lawyer's office. The air smelled like old leather, mahogany, and pure, unfiltered greed. My siblings, Marcus, Brandon, and Ashley, were dressed in designer black pretending to mourn, but I could see the dollar signs dancing in their eyes. Grandma Cecilia had passed away a week ago, and just minutes ago Mr. Whitman, her attorney for 40 years, had read the will. $3 million for Marcus, $3 million for Brandon, $3 million for Ashley, plus the house, the cars, the stocks, everything. And for me, Josephine Marie Caldwell, the family disappointment, the art school dropout who spent her summers baking cookies instead of networking. I got a key, a single rusted brass key inside a small envelope. No money, no property. Just a key to a safety deposit box that my brother joked probably contained Grandma's dirt collection. They laughed at me. They pitied me. They told me I could come over for dinner if I was struggling to pay rent. But here's the thing they didn't know. Here's the secret that Mr. Whitman and I shared across that heavy table. That rusty key didn't open a box of junk. It opened a door to a secret empire worth $280 million. And the best part, Grandma made sure they wouldn't see a single dime of it. I'm Joey, and this is the story of how my siblings sold their souls for cash while I inherited the world. Let's back up a bit. You need to understand the dynamic of the Caldwell family to really appreciate the ending. Growing up, I was the odd one out. My brothers, Marcus and Brandon, were business sharks in training. They went to Ivy League schools, wore suits to Thanksgiving dinner, and talked about ROI and market caps before they could legally drink. My sister Ashley was the golden girl, beauty pageants, sororities, and a marriage to a plastic surgeon. Then there was me, Joey. I went to state college for fine arts. I liked painting landscapes. I wore thrift store sweaters. To my parents and siblings, I was a bad investment. Art doesn't pay the bills. Joey, my father used to say, shaking his head. Be like Marcus. Be useful. Because I wasn't useful to the family image, I was ignored. And honestly, I preferred it that way. While my siblings were busy sucking up to Grandma Cecilia for her money, bringing her expensive gifts she didn't want, I was actually spending time with her. Grandma Cece was formidable. She was this tiny woman with sharp eyes who always smelled like lavender and old paper. My siblings thought she was just a senile old lady sitting on a pile of cash. They tolerated her stories because they wanted to be in the will. But I loved her stories. I spent every summer at her house. Not because I wanted an allowance, but because I loved her. We'd spend hours in her garden. She taught me how to ride horses at her ranch in Montana, a place my siblings refused to visit because there was no cell service. We cataloged her old jewelry together. We cooked Polish recipes from her childhood. She told me about Grandpa, about the hard times, about how they started with nothing. Joey, she told me once, her hand shaking slightly as she held a teacup. Your siblings see the fruit, but they don't care about the roots. You are the only one who knows how to dig. I didn't know what she meant back then. I just thought she was being poetic. When she got sick, I was the one who moved in to take care of her. I changed the sheets. I read to her. I held her hand when the morphine made her hallucinations scary. Where were Marcus, Brandon, and Ashley? Oh, they visited. Briefly. They'd breeze in for 20 minutes. Check the antique silverware to make sure it was still there, complain about the smell of medicine, and leave. Make sure you keep the receipts for the groceries, Joey, Marcus told me once, standing in the hallway. We don't want you dipping into the inheritance early. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just went back to Grandma's bedside. When she passed, the grief hit me like a physical blow. I lost my best friend. My siblings? They didn't shed a tear. They just called the lawyer. Which brings us back to Mr. Whitman's office. The atmosphere was suffocating. My mother was there too, dabbing at dry eyes, but I heard her whispering to Brandon about inheritance tax brackets before we even sat down. Mr. Whitman was a solemn man with a poker face that could rival a Vegas pro. He sat at the head of the table, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. Cecilia was very specific about her wishes, he began. My siblings leaned forward like sharks smelling blood in the water. To my grandson Marcus, strictly cash assets totaling $3 million. Marcus pumped his fist silently. Yes. To my grandson Brandon and $3 million. Brandon high-fived Marcus. New boat, here I come. To my granddaughter Ashley, $3 million. Ashley let out a squeal she tried to disguise as a sob. Oh, Grandma. Then came the assets, the portfolio, the house on the hill, the vintage Mercedes. It was all divided equally among the three of them. They were rich, objectively, fantastically rich. And finally, Mr. Whitman said, looking directly at me. His expression softened just a fraction. To my granddaughter, Josephine. The room went silent. Ashley smirked. Probably the China collection. No one wants that. I leave the contents of Safety Deposit Box 447 at First National Bank on Meridian Street. Mr. Whitman slid the envelope across the table. That was it. No $3 million, no property, no stocks. I picked up the envelope. Inside was the rusty key. It looked ancient, like something you'd find in a junk drawer. Is that it? Brandon scoffed. Figures. Even dead, Grandma knew Joey couldn't handle real money. Maybe it's savings bonds. My mother offered weak comfort, though she was already looking at Ashley's paperwork. Or sentimental value. It's junk, Marcus declared, standing up and checking his watch. Grandma was a hoarder of memories. Joey gets the memories. We get the future. Seems fair. He pulled out his phone and showed a picture to the group. Speaking of clearing out the old, I had the landscapers over at Grandma's house this morning. Told them to clear out the back room for my new home office. My blood ran cold. The back room? That's where my things were, my childhood artwork, the photo albums I made with Grandma. Marcus shrugged, not an ounce of remorse in his body. Yeah, well, it's my house now. Burned it all in the fire pit. Too much clutter. I felt tears prick my eyes, not because of the money, but because they were erasing me. They were erasing us. You burned the letters I wrote her from college? I whispered. Joey, grow up, Ashley snapped, gathering her purse. It's paper. You have a key to a box of who knows what. Go treasure hunt. We have a celebration lunch to get to. Mr. Whitman waited until they had all bustled out of the room, loud and obnoxious. Then he looked at me. Miss Caldwell, he said quietly, the bank closes at 5 p.m. I highly suggest you go today, alone. There was a twinkle in his eye, a secret. I will, I said, clutching the rusty key. I skipped the celebration lunch. I didn't want to watch them order caviar and talk about which luxury cars they were buying. Instead, I drove my beat-up Honda to First National Bank. It was one of those old-school banks with marble columns and echoes. I approached the desk. I'm here for box 447. The woman at the desk, Mrs. Chen, stopped typing. She looked up, and her face broke into a warm smile. Ah, Miss Caldwell, we've been expecting you. You have? Your grandmother gave us very specific instructions, she said, leading me down into the cool, silent vault. She said you would come alone. She said you would come only after the others had signed their papers, and she said... Mrs. Chen paused, unlocking the heavy metal gate. She said you'd understand why when you opened it. She left me in a private viewing room. The box was huge, much larger than a standard jewelry box. My hands were shaking as I fit the rusty key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying click. I lifted the lid. Inside, there were three things: a thick manila envelope, a leather-bound journal I recognized immediately, and a modern silver key with a tag that had GPS coordinates on it. I opened the journal first. It was Grandma's diary, not her personal one, but her business diary, the one my siblings swore didn't exist. They had torn her study apart looking for it. I flipped to the last page. The ink was shaky, dated just a week before she died. My dearest Joey, if you are reading this, it means two things. One, I am gone, and two, your siblings have gleefully taken the bait. Let them have the 3 million each. Let them have the house. It's enough money to keep them satisfied, and more importantly, enough to keep them stupid. What they don't know, my darling girl, is that the millions they received represent exactly 15% of my actual wealth. I gasped aloud in the empty room. 15%? I continued reading. You see, while your brothers and sisters were asking about my will, you were asking about my life. While they looked at my jewelry, you listened to my stories. Remember the story about Grandpa's foolish investment in that coffee shop in Seattle back in the 80s? Your father laughed at him. Well, that coffee shop was Starbucks. We never sold the shares. Remember the dirt collection in Austin? That land is now the heart of the downtown tech district. I lease it to 3 major software companies. The rusty key you are holding opens the door to everything I really owned, everything I kept hidden from grasping hands and greedy hearts. I opened the manila envelope, my breath caught in my throat. Deeds, titles, stock certificates, 47 commercial properties across 7 states, a blind trust containing an investment portfolio worth approximately $280 million, the publishing rights to Grandpa's patents, art collections stored in a climate-controlled facility in Geneva, including the Monet that Marcus swore was a fake. And the silver key? The silver key leads to the ranch in Montana. It's not just a ranch, Joey. It sits on 18,000 acres of prime land, and it's all yours. Held in a trust that no one knows exists. I slumped back in the chair, tears streaming down my face. The letter continued. I have one condition, Joey. You must never share this with your siblings. Not out of cruelty, but because they have already shown you who they are. Marcus burned your memories. Ashley mocked your dreams. Brandon sees you as a charity case. They chose their inheritance. Now choose yours. Mr. Whitman knows everything. Trust him. And remember, wealth isn't what you are given. It's what you build. You have been building character your whole life. Love, Grandma Cece. P.S. The rusty key is from my very first apartment. I kept it to remind myself that I started with nothing. Now it's yours. I sat there for an hour. I wasn't crying from grief anymore. I was crying because for the first time in my life, I realized someone had really seen me. Grandma saw past the failed artist label. She saw the loyalty. She saw the love. And she had just handed me an empire. I called Mr. Whitman from the bank lobby. I found it, I said, my voice trembling. Excellent, he replied, his voice warm. Your siblings signed documents this morning accepting their portion of the estate as complete and final. They cannot contest what they don't know exists. Grandma structured it perfectly. Shall we begin the transfers tomorrow? Yes, I said. But Mr. Whitman? Keep it quiet, I don't want them to know. Not yet. Understood. That evening, I had to attend a family dinner at Marcus's house. Well, Grandma's house, that was now Marcus's. Walking in was painful. I saw the empty spot on the wall where my photos used to hang. I saw the ashes in the fire pit outside. They were drinking champagne that cost more than my rent. Look who decided to show up, Brandon slurred, waving a glass. Joey, come have some charity champagne. We're celebrating. Yeah, Ashley chimed in, looking at my worn-out boots. At least you can get a free meal. Mom was saying we should set up a fund for you. The Starving Artist Relief Fund. What do you think? They all laughed. My mother smiled pitifully. It's a kind offer, Joey. You should take it. I poured myself a glass of water. I looked at them, really looked at them. Marcus was already talking about gutting Grandma's garden to put in a swimming pool. Tacky, Grandma would have called it. Ashley was bragging about quitting her job. Brandon had already bought 2 Porsches. They were rich, but they were hollow. I'll be fine, I said calmly. Did you open your magic box? Marcus sneered. What was in it? A cookie recipe? A key, I said, to the future Grandma wanted me to have. Cryptic. Ashley rolled her eyes. Whatever. More wine, anyone. I left early. As I walked out the door, I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt free. Over the next 6 months, my life changed. Quietly. I didn't buy a Ferrari. I didn't move into a penthouse. I stayed in my apartment for a while, but I flew to Montana. I unlocked the ranch house with the silver key. Inside, I found a studio Grandma had built for me, facing the mountains. On the easel was a note. "Paint your truth, Joey." So I did. I painted like I'd never painted before. I managed the properties remotely with Mr. Whitman's help. I learned the business. I wasn't just the artist anymore. I was a CEO. But nobody knew. 6 months later, I held my first major art exhibition in New York City. My siblings came, not because they supported me, but because they heard there was free booze and press. They wanted to bask in the spotlight, to show everyone how benevolent they were for supporting their little sister. They showed up looking flashy and loud. "Cute little show, Joey," Marcus said, looking at a painting with a price tag of $15,000. "Do you really think anyone's going to pay that much for this?" "Actually," a voice said behind him, "everything has already been sold." The gallery owner stepped forward. The entire collection was purchased an hour ago by an anonymous buyer for $2.3 million. My siblings' jaws dropped. "Who?" Ashley gasped. $2.3 million. "A private holding company," I said, sipping my champagne. "CLC Investments. Cecilia Louise Caldwell Investments, my company, Grandma's company. I was buying my own art to launch my career, using a fraction of the interest from the trust. And it worked. The buzz was instant." "Wow," Brandon said, his eyes wide. "Joey, we need to talk. You need a business manager. I can help you invest that." "Or I can help you brand yourself," Ashley interrupted. "Family discount." I smiled at them, the same pitying smile they had given me for years. "That's sweet of you," I said, "but I already have financial advisors. They manage my portfolio." "Portfolio?" Marcus scoffed. "You have one lucky break and now you have a portfolio?" "The one Grandma helped me build," I said softy. "You guys got the cash. I got the rest." "What rest?" Marcus demanded, stepping closer. "There was nothing else. There was a rusty key," I reminded him, "and the stories you didn't listen to, and the trust you didn't earn." I leaned in close, so only they could hear. "By the way, Marcus, I heard you bought that new sports car from the dealership on 5th Street. "Yeah, so?" "I own the dealership, I own the land your house sits on, and I own the bank where you keep your $3 million. Okay, I didn't actually say that last part out loud, but I thought it. Instead, I just said, Grandma left you what you wanted, money without effort. She left me what I needed, freedom. I walked away to greet a critic, leaving them standing there confused and terrified. In the years that followed, the prediction in Grandma's letter came true. Brandon crashed his cars and lost his money in bad crypto scams. Ashley got divorced and spent her fortune on legal fees. Marcus is house poor, struggling to maintain the mansion he can't afford to heat. They still call me sometimes, asking for a loan, and I help them, occasionally, but not with cash. I started the Rusty Key Foundation. It provides full scholarships and living stipends for artists and students who have talent but no support system. When my siblings ask for money, I send them a link to the foundation's application page. "Fill out the form," I tell them. "Tell me your story. Grandma always said the story is worth more than the gold." They haven't applied yet, so that's my story. I'm writing this from the porch of the ranch in Montana. The sun is setting over the mountains and it's breathtaking. I learned that revenge isn't about being cruel back to the people who hurt you. It's about living your life so fully, so beautifully, that their negativity can't touch you anymore. Grandma Cece knew that. She gave them enough rope to hang themselves, and she gave me the wings to fly. I still keep that rusty key on a chain around my neck. It reminds me that sometimes the things that look worthless to the world are actually the most valuable things of all. What about you guys? Have you ever been underestimated by your family? Or discovered a secret that changed everything? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more videos about karma, family secrets, and sweet revenge, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Thanks for listening. Remember, Be kind, listen to the stories, and never judge a key by its rust. See you in the next one.